To be called a Smithfield ham, the hams have to be cured and processed in one area of Smithfield, Virginia. The ham is hand-salted first, dry cured, and then smoked very, very slowly over hickory, and it's aged for many months. We're using a 10-pound Smithfield ham. It's called Premium Easy Carve. First thing you have to do is bone the ham, because we want to create a cavity in the center of the ham to fill with those wonderful grits and greens. Your butcher will do this for you if you don't want to deal with getting the bone out yourself. And now you have to look at where the bone is the closest to the surface of the ham. That's where you're going to find a kind of natural seam and where it makes it really easy to remove the bone. And what I like to do is just cut down, and then with the point of a boning knife, just keep touching that bone all the way along. And then I will be able to open the ham. It kind of almost does it naturally. So just keep pulling the meat away from the bone, and we're almost there. And that bone is great because it can be used for the basis for a wonderful pea soup or bean soup. Now you see you have a nice cavity in here. You want to take out all fat and sinew and some extra meat for the stuffing. The meat from the cavity should be diced, and you're going to want about 2 cups of this diced ham, 1 pound. And now we have to start on the rest of the stuffing. In a big sauté pan, melt 6 tablespoons of butter, 4 cloves of garlic that have been very finely chopped, and 1 large white onion, finely chopped. Just cook this mixture until it's soft. And now the green. These are mustard greens, collard greens. You can use kale. And, of course, turnip greens. They're very tender. And the larger leaves stack one atop each other and then roll them up tightly, like that. This will save you a lot of time in this process of which they call chiffonading, and as finely as possible. This fine chiffonade creates a very tender green. When you unroll this, you have really beautiful, long, thin strips of green. And you do this to the mustard green and to the collards. Now these are cooking very nicely. Before I add the turnip greens, I'm going to add a half a cup of dry white wine. Now these have to cook for a long time, about 30 to 45 minutes, until they're very, very tender. Cover them almost completely so that they kind of steam and cook at the same time. Now, in a saucepan about this size, we want to start cooking our grits. Get a good quality grit, by the way. This is the Quaker Quick Grits is very nice. This is white corn ground to a grit consistency. And we need, in the pan, we need 3 cups of milk. This is whole milk. And 1 cup of heavy cream. So this is not a low-calorie filling, but it is Southern and good. When that cream and milk comes to a boil, stir in 1 cup of your quick grits, stirring constantly, and cook for about 5 minutes. So here we have nice thick grits. Remove them from the heat. And we're going to stir in 1½ cups of freshly grated Parmesan cheese. I have 2 cups here. We're going to just reserve a ½ cup for something else. Make sure you grate it quite finely. And 2 teaspoons of chopped flat leaf parsley and ½ teaspoon of thyme leaves. And now you're going to spread this mixture onto a baking sheet to cool. Everything's cool enough so that we can now put together the stuffing and then put the stuffing in the boned ham. The greens first have to be put put into some cheesecloth. I have 4 layers of cheesecloth here. What we want to do is get rid of all the excess moisture. Watch how much moisture comes out of these greens. Okay, so now we just add this to our bowl. And now we're going to add our ham. And our grits, which are also cooled. But if you catch them right at this point, they're still creamy, and they'll mix very nicely into the ham and greens. This makes a lot of stuffing. The leftover stuffing is going to be turned into a gratin and roasted at the same time as the ham. It's like turkey stuffing. Now, if you weren't going to put any ham in this, you could mix up the grits and the greens by themselves and then make a gratin just of that mixture, adding 2 eggs to it. That's for the vegetarians in your household. And so here's our stuffing ready to spoon into the ham cavity. Now, the first thing that I like to do is score the outside hard skin of the ham with little slits. That will give me a guideline for my string ties and keep those string ties in place. So we want to do maybe 3 or 4 slits at about 1 1/4 inch intervals all the way around the ham. Notice I'm only going down like 1/8 of an inch. 1, 2, 3. That's good. And now we're going to spoon some of the stuffing right here into the cavity. We want to make the stuffing as even throughout this ham as possible. So now we're going to tie it up with cotton butcher's string. Don't use anything that's not cotton or natural fiber. If you have linen string, that's okay. But no polyester, please. Now we're going to run this twine now through those slits that you made in the skin. You might need to poke it down there with the back of a little paring knife. We want this first tie to be very tight. Now we go down to the next little slit. And we're going to recreate what I like to think of as the blanket stitch. It's just like embroidery. And you go under that part of the string and pull this string taut like that. So you see it's staying in its slits, and you've now gone down to the next layer. Now hold this with your fingers like this. Find your next insert, come up around your ham, go under there. And you can take this other string and go around the ham like this and tie it off. And then you rub your whole ham with black pepper, freshly ground. I like pepper, but you can overdo this, so be careful. And now cut your cheesecloth so it is twice the length of the ham, leaving a little bit of extra to tie. What we're trying to accomplish here is to cover the ham and to hold the stuffing in. And we tie this closed at the shank end. Think of it as the ham's Easter bonnet. And it's ready for the roasting pan. Now I'm going to put this in a rack in a roasting pan and bake it, the cut side down, for 12 minutes a pound at 350 degrees for about 2 to 2 1/4 hours. I'll show you how to make that quick gratin, which is so good with the leftover filling. Just gently beat with a fork 2 eggs. You're going to add these to your stuffing mixture. And choose a dish, a shallow baking dish that's like a tian, they call it in French, or a Pyrex baking dish. The eggs you see already have lightened up this mixture. They'll cause it to puff a little bit during the baking. And this will be baked for about 30 minutes. Put this in the oven about a half an hour before your ham comes out of the oven. And that half a cup of cheese that you reserved will be sprinkled right on the top. Bake at 400 degrees until bubbly and golden brown. And now the vegetables. Nothing could be easier than oven roasted vegetables. Baby turnips, these pretty little white turnips, and baby carrots. These are so delectable. And the way that you prepare these is to use this little beaked knife. It's a turning knife. And you just can cut off the bottom of the turnip if you like. And the shape of this knife makes it very easy to turn the vegetables. I try not to take off too much of the vegetable. I don't want to waste it. But you go right up to the green stems and just leave most of the stems on. You can add the trimmings to the stock pot, or you can add them nicely to your compost. Carrots are done the same way. Now to roast these, you can just drizzle a little bit of very good virgin olive oil in the bottom of a roasting pan, and just put your vegetables right in the pan. I like to move them around so they get a little coating of oil on them. If the vegetables are a little larger than this, not so tender and young, you can, of course, pre-boil these a little bit and then roast them. But I find that these cook so nicely the way they are. Sprinkling of coarse salt and freshly ground pepper. And then if you like, just a sprig or two of fresh thyme. And a sprig or two of parsley too, if you like. And these go into a 450-degree oven and stir occasionally until the vegetables are very tender and pierced with the tip of a knife. And that's going to take, for vegetables this size, about 45 minutes. Timing is very important when creating a meal like this. So if you have only one oven, I would suggest first roasting your ham, getting that out of the way early in the day, because that can sit. It doesn't have to be, it can be served at room temperature. It doesn't have to be piping hot when you serve it. And then I would roast the vegetables. I would make my biscuits at the last minute. And I would do the gratin also at the last minute. And no Southern buffet would be a Southern buffet without the biscuits. And these are quite unusual because they're flavored with sage. And the first thing I'm going to do is make 2 tablespoons of chopped sage. You don't want to chop these in the Cuisinart because you don't want to really bruise them. I'm using a really sharp steel knife, and just set those aside until your biscuit mixture is done. Now, there's this big controversy here at the studio and in any kitchen about biscuits. Do you make them by hand, or do you make them in a food processor? Well, I've sort of combined making them by hand with the food processor. And what I do first is mix my dry ingredients. Put 3 cups of cake flour. Don't use self-rising flour in this recipe. And then we're going to add 1.5 tablespoons of baking powder. Must make sure that your baking powder is fresh. Nothing's worse. I tried making biscuits one Sunday morning and they didn't rise at all, and I thought, oh, what did I do wrong? It was the baking powder. It was old, and baking powder does get old. And also 2 teaspoons of coarse salt. And I'm also going to add 1/4 teaspoon of freshly ground black pepper. And now you can cut your butter, and we're using 6 tablespoons of unsalted butter, and this is very cold and very hard. You can cut that in with your little pastry cutter. You can break it in with your fingertips if you don't have really hot hands, or you can do what I'm going to do, because this, I find, saves a tremendous amount of time. I'm just going to add a little bit, about 1 cup of flour to my food processor. I'm going to add the butter, and I'm just going to blend it in the food processor. I'm going to pulse. So in about, probably 1/20th of the time that it would take you to mix the butter in with your pastry cutter, you have it all mixed in. I learned this secret, these little things, while I was doing a lot of catering, and you just can't spend the time. Now we're going to add buttermilk and this chopped sage. I'm going to add the chopped sage right now to my mixture. And now I'm going to add my buttermilk. you're going to need to add, approximately a cup of buttermilk. And I'm just very lightly stirring it. We don't want to overwork it. Some cooks I know don't even touch their dough with a wooden spoon. They use only their fingertips. Now notice I have kneaded this, not at all. I have mixed it hardly at all. And it's falling apart, but it's sticking together at the same time. If you work it more than 15 seconds or so, you have probably overworked your dough, and it will not give you the satisfactory results of a light and flaky biscuit. Pat this into a round. The lighter the touch, the better. And we're going to cut this into 2 3/4 inch rounds. We're going to do 7 around and 1 in the center. Now the pan is not greased, doesn't have to be. And you want to place the biscuits close together, touching each other, because you want them to rise. And now brush the tops with just a little bit of buttermilk and place a sage leaf on the top of each biscuit. And bake these at 500 degrees until golden brown. That's going to take about 20 minutes. It smells so delicious. You can smell that cheese and the stuffing. And now remove the cheesecloth, but don't remove the strings. It looks very nice. Be careful here. And now lift this onto a baking sheet. And we're going to put this into the broiler. What we want to do is just very gently brown the top of the ham. Now watch it really closely. You don't want to burn the ham. You just want to get that layer, that top layer of the ham, nice and glistening brown. Well, the ham is beautiful. Now let it sit just for a few moments before you put it out on a platter. It really needs to just cool off slightly, because when you take off the strings, you don't want the whole ham to sort of like collapse. And while the ham is cooling, you can garnish the serving platter with the rest of the greens and spoon the roasted vegetables into the serving dish. Then carefully snip the strings and move the ham onto the platter. Place all of the food on your buffet table, and you're ready for your friends and your family to sit down and enjoy Easter dinner. It's beautiful, it's colorful, it's extremely delicious, and it is typically Southern. Our grits and greens stuffed ham.